I'm here live with Tracy Ballard, and we are going to talk about the hot topic of rentals in San Francisco and what's going on in the rental market. Tracy has been my number one go-to for rents for 10 years, I think.
Almost, maybe.
So Tracy, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, definitely. It's fun. It's fun to talk about this. I know people are super interested in it.
Well, it seems like this year, more than any other year before, you and I are doing a lot of tag teaming, because when I'm talking to clients, oftentimes they're calling me because their tenants gave notice. And then they've maybe tried to rent their place for a little while unsuccessfully or didn't like the results. And then they have to hear from me that maybe they might not like the results of selling their condo either. So homeowners are in a very difficult situation in some segments of the market. And I'd love to hear straight from the horse's mouth, like, for rents, is it all bad in San Francisco, and how bad is it?
Right. No, that's an excellent question. So no, it's not all bad. When I talk to owners of single family homes in, let's call it like mid San Francisco, so let's say anything west of Van Ness, and even more so west of Divisadero, and especially if the house has a yard and lots of outdoor space, then the rents are almost the same as they were before, give or take. So in some cases we might get 5 or 10% less than the last time around, but in some cases we've gotten more. It's a little bit wonky. But then the closer you move to downtown, whether you're single family, condo, or apartment, the bigger the rent declines have been. The worst area is Soma and Dogpatch, which makes sense because that's where housing is most dense, right? So you've got lots of condos and apartments in those areas. And so rents have fallen in Soma anywhere from 30 to 50%. And then Dogpatch is about 40 to 50%. So yeah, that's a big pill to swallow. And then as you go north of Market Street, Tenderloin, all the way up to Russian Hill, big drops as well. So anywhere from 20 to 30% mostly. As you go west from Van Ness into Pacific Heights, Marina, all the way south to say Noe Valley, rents are down about 15, well, let's say 10 to 20%. So not as bad. Richmond and Sunset have started to come down in the beginning of the fall. They actually, rents went up there when downtown was starting to go down. But now rents have started to fall there as well. But not as much as the rest of the city. So maybe 5-10%, somewhere in that region. And and the biggest drops are in condos and apartments. The lowest drops are in single families.
Got it. So if someone, say, called me, like I spoke with a gentleman today, and he has a place in the Marina, and he bought it in 2016, doesn't want to lose money, which his definition of losing money is, does not calculate any of the like free rent that he got for the last 4 years. I mean, as his mortgage was being paid, right? Like he's not calculating that.
Right.
And he wants to be able to pay my fees and all of those things. And, so he wants to sell for a couple $100,000 more than he paid, which is hard to do right now. And so, I told him he should talk to you and, find out like, okay, well, it might be a good time to rent. And then of course the question is, well, if I want to rent for a year, and then sell in a year from now, then how do I do that? And I know you're not an attorney, but I'm sure you get that question. So how do you usually answer that question?
Yeah. So in San Francisco, recently it just changed so that every property has something called just cause eviction, which means that although you're signing a 12-month lease with your tenants, they can stay as long as they want to on a month-to-month basis. Wanting to sell it is not considered a just cause. A just cause would be they stop paying rent or they become a nuisance, kind of the typical eviction reasons that you think of. You can do an owner move-in eviction, but not if you're going to sell it. You actually have to move into it if you're going to do that kind of eviction. So if it's a condo or a house, then you're exempt from the rent increase maximums that we call rent control here in San Francisco. If it's a TIC or an apartment, so 2 units or more that are owned by the same owner in one building, then you have San Francisco rent control. So renting something right now, pretty much, I mean, we're hoping this is the bottom of the market. So your tenant's going to get a good deal. If it's rent controlled, you've got to pretty much plan on them being there for many, 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 many years, because the longer that they're there and rents start to recover, the better deal it gets for them. So they could
The
be
more
there
they want to stay.
a really long time. If it's a condo or a single family home, then at least you can raise the rent to market as rents start to recover. And when you're able to do that, the average tenancy is only about 1.5 years, or it used to be. Now it's all changed, right? Who knows what it's going to be? But if you can keep the rent at market, then the tenant is more likely to move on. The more expensive the rent is, the more upwardly mobile your tenant is, and the less amount of time they're likely going to be there, because maybe they're going to buy a place of their own, or they're going to upgrade because they're going to make more money, or they are starting a family, whatever the reason might be. If it's an in-law apartment that's rent controlled, or a studio apartment that's rent controlled, those tenants may not be as upwardly mobile, and you should just plan on them being there for the long term. So if I've talked to a few owners lately who have TICs, and that's a really hard decision to make right now, because if they don't sell it now, it's hard to say when they'll ever have it vacant again if they rent it now. They can do a buyout. They can buy their tenant out of their lease, but then the tenant has a lot of leverage at that point, and it's really the price that the tenant says. And if you can't meet that price, then you can try to sell it with them in it, but that's going to greatly affect the value, I'm sure. So yeah, it's a tough spot to be in right now, because if it's not a good time to sell, it's often not a good time to rent either.
But so if you have a condo, you can rent it for a low rate, and 1 year from now you can raise the rent. And if the tenants choose to stay there, you maybe feel fine with it. And if they choose to go, then you can choose to sell it at that time.
Yes, exactly. And you're not allowed by law to raise the rent with the intention of the tenant moving out. That would be called constructive eviction. So you just want to be careful and keep it at market. You don't want to go way over market, and be reasonable about it. I do have clients that tell me like they do want to sell it in 1 year. So we will disclose that to new tenants when they're looking, because if they're looking for a spot to set up shop for 4 or 5 years, then maybe it's not a good fit for them. The tenants that we're renting to now are super savvy. They are locals, almost, I'd say 95% of them are locals who are just looking to upgrade. They don't really have to move, and they know all about rent control. Condos are much harder to rent right now for that reason. And so we're seeing more tenants propose 18-month leases, 24-month leases, or just options to renew later, and that's how we've been able to get deals done on condos. But yeah, it's become a lot more difficult, and almost every tenant is negotiating as well. So every unit is more difficult to rent, and we have about 3 times as many as we did before COVID. So it's been a challenge.
So like if you have something in Soma and, you're competing with all of this inventory, I know I heard some people are giving away like a couple months free. Can you give away some free months and then after that raise it to a higher rate, or you have to give away the 3 months and then have the super like 50% discounted rate as well in order to be competitive enough in the market to move it? What is the reality?
So it's a little bit of both. Again, the tenants are super savvy about these free month offers. Generally, you see them in rent-controlled buildings where the owners are trying to keep the base rents as high as possible, and using the free rent to get the effective rent down to where market is. But I mean, just today, I have somebody who is saying, I don't want any free rent. I want the base rent down here. So it's a difficult sell right now. And we're also seeing it in the newer buildings because, you know, the rental income is how you value a building, right? So they want their base rents to be high too, but they're good with giving all kinds of incentives. But sometimes in Dogpatch specifically, we've had to do both, lower the base rent and give them free rent. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. You sometimes have to do both.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing is that, you know, because of this, like prices are low in some cases, 20 to 30% lower than they were. I've heard some outliers of 50%,
Mhm.
things that have happened. And so investors could come in and swoop up some deals right now on the buy side. But then they do need to be prepared for dealing with the competitiveness for the next few years. I mean, I, for one, really do believe in San Francisco. I'm very bullish on San Francisco. And I do think that, you know, we're going through a little bit of a hard time right now in condo land. And I firmly believe that things are going to come back. It's a great city. I think people are going to want to go back to the office. And I think that the restaurants are going to open back up and people are going to remember what San Francisco was all about. And then all those people who went to Marin are going to be tired of traffic and they're going to come back home. Right. So, but you have to be ready to ride out a few years. You know, it's risk, you know, which is how you make money, right? You don't make money without risk. And it always seems like hindsight seems like, oh gosh, I wish I would have scooped up one of those fire sale condos in 2008. And I'm sure you remember 2008, like nobody that I knew had money in 2008. And, you know, and then even if you did, you were too scared to buy anything because it didn't
Right.
feel like the market was ever going to recover.
But it always does, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I mean, when you're in it, it just feels so bad. I mean, I'm telling condo people, I'm trying to get them to rent with you instead of selling with me. I'm like, no, don't sell. Like it will recover. But I personally think it's going to be a few, like 2 or 3 years before on the sales side that we see a recovery. What do you feel like on the rental side?
Right. So I was talking to a client yesterday who doesn't want to lower her rents now because she's convinced that after the new year, things are going to start to come back. I think that's really optimistic. I appreciate her optimism and I would love for that to be true. I think it's a long shot. Although I am starting to get calls from people who are saying, tenants who are saying, I'm moving back to San Francisco in January, or I'm moving back to San Francisco in August. Someone called me for August. And so yes, I agree with you. That's going to start happening as things start opening up. I mean, San Francisco has not lost its luster. And I agree. I think it's going to take several years. Maybe by the end of next year or the year after, beginning of 2022, maybe we'll start to see rents start to bump up. I doubt it's going to be before next fall or winter. But as far as like getting back to where we were even earlier this year or last year, I do think it's going to be probably 4 or 5 years till we get to that point. And then maybe it'll go even higher, right? I mean, that's kind of what we do here. Up and down,
Yeah.
up and down.
Yeah. I
But,
mean,
I'm bullish too.
on the plus side, you know, for both the rentals and the sales side, it is, you know, there are people who've been waiting on the sidelines and living in like really small quarters and stuff like that, you know, are able to finally upgrade. And so it's a nice kind of reset for a lot of people to be able to finally afford something, whether it is renting or buying. And I think that we really needed that as much as it hurts on the other side for a lot of people, right? It's been, you know, it's like somebody's got to lose here.
Yeah.
But what goes up must come down and what goes down must come up. And I do think that we're going to recover.
I agree.
So are you seeing less people trying to rent their own stuff these days?
Yes. So I do get new clients now who tell me I used to do this myself, but this market is not something I'm going to try to attempt. And I'm also getting a lot of people who are trying to, let go of one agent and then and then hire me. And, a stale listing is always a challenge, but usually it's because it's overpriced. And, until the owner comes to reality about where the rents are, it doesn't matter who your agent is, or even if you're doing it yourself, you've got to just be realistic about the price. And it's kind of hard to tell right now because there's not, good data sources that are up to date. There's lots of, backward looking stuff that doesn't help us in the now. And like I was mentioning before, the different neighborhoods are doing different things, or different areas of the city. Also, studios and 1 bedrooms have fallen a lot more than 2 bedrooms or bigger. So agents in San Francisco leasing agents don't really use MLS. So all you can go by is what you're seeing. But then asking rents can be way off too, and all over the place, because again, the landlords and the agents don't know where the right price is. So you see it kind of all over the place. So yeah, using an agent who can also cross-sell your property from another listing of theirs is super helpful to get attention in a market like this, because it truly feels like you're just kind of drowning in a sea of vacancies. And so, we do things like video walkthroughs to try to make our listings stand out. And we say that we'll do Zoom tours or FaceTime tours with you. But it's a battle to just stand out from the crowd.
Are people renting sight unseen?
Not so much now. We did have quite a bit of that actually when things first got shut down. So from about March to June, we did almost all of our business virtually, but that was only maybe 20 or 25% of normal. We did do a showing the other day with somebody from Montreal that's trying to rent something before they get here, but I'd say it's not so much sight unseen. Most people want to see it in person.
Got it. And I would think that the bigger stuff, like maybe 4 bedrooms, is renting, because it used to be like you throw like 4 tech guys and, everybody pays $2,000 and like one of them sleeping in the dining room, and you're getting this, like, I think you and I rented a place. Yeah. There was this place, it was actually like a 2 bedroom or 3 bedroom on Woodward. I think you rented it for one of my clients, and it ended up being made into somehow like 4 or 5 bedroom. They got like 10 grand a month, and I couldn't sell it for 1.3 million. So it was just like, made no sense to sell because the rent was so good on it. But I imagine those days are over, right?
Yes. So where I've really noticed it is in the Mission District. So I have a client who's got 3 or 4 4-bedroom units that he used to rent for between $7,000 and $8,000 a month. And you can't even it's hard to even get $5,500 for them now, because you're just there's not as many of those people that are wanting to move in together for obvious reasons. But we still do get groups of roommates that are looking, that maybe live together now, or 2 couples that want to move in together. But yeah, nothing like before. But I'm confident that those days will come back, just like everything else will come back.
And where do people who want to rent look? Is Craigslist still a thing, or what are the things these days?
Yeah, Craigslist is still a thing, as much as we would like it not to be. But let's see, another one that's local that's starting to get more popular is Zumper. And Zillow is another one. Zillow has purchased a lot of other companies now too. So Trulia, Hot Pads. Can't remember if Pad Mapper is one of theirs or not. But they've got a good corner on the market. So I would say between Zillow, Craigslist, those are the 2 big ones. Apartments.com, the Jeff Goldblum commercials. I just had a client with a larger apartment building pay for advertising with that, and I've been not so impressed with the results. So I don't think that people here use that as much. But yeah, Craigslist is still a thing, and Zillow started charging you to put your listings on their sites, and so there's less on Zillow now than there used to be. So actually, Craigslist is kind of making a comeback now because it's still free, so you can find more on Craigslist.
Interesting. And we end up getting a lot, like I find my listings, start getting calls from people who are like, oh, I want to like rent your listing that's for sale. And it's like, I've heard that people have like lost money, like getting these like deals on my listings that are ripped off scams, right? So that's the scary thing with Craigslist, is just that verify. Like, I don't know. It must be so scary to look. So, and it seems like, I know you guys sometimes work on that side, or do you work on that side?
On the tenant side?
Yeah.
We have kind of on and off over the years. Okay. It's difficult to, and I don't know how sales agents do it, but it's difficult to tour with a tenant all day and not show any of your listings to anyone else but that one person, right? So it's kind of, it's a challenge with leasing, I think, because you do such a high volume of showings. And so we've had agents from time to time we call them relocations, where they take the tenant on a tour. We don't have an agent in-house that's doing that right now, but I do know several tenants agents, and they actually are starting to get busier now, because just in the last couple months, I would say, they disappeared from March to about July, and now they're back touring with the tenants, but the tenants have to pay those agents for representation, because the landlords only pay their listing agent like me. So unless your company, if you're a tenant, unless your company is paying for it, you're probably not inclined to pay an agent to conduct a search for you, unless you're, maybe coming from an international location or something like that, or you just don't have time, but you have a lot of money. Most people prefer to do it themselves. Interesting.
All right. Well, anything that I forgot to ask you that everyone else is asking you about renting?
Where is this the bottom? I hope it's the bottom. I mean, this time of year, it usually is kind of the bottom for the year, right? So rents usually soften a bit. So I'm hopeful that this month, December, will be the bottom. And then, things will start to improve in January. But by improve, I don't necessarily mean that rents go up, just that they stop going down. If they would just stabilize, that would be fantastic. But I think that that's probably going to be, when the tech companies, and even it's not just tech, it's every industry, right? When all those companies start saying, okay, it's time to come back to the office, that's when we're going to start to see things at least stabilize, and then rents will start to go up from that point. So I think now, next summer is kind of what people are thinking for coming back to the office, but who knows?
Well, I think we've got good news on the vaccine. It looks pretty good. I mean, I would say next summer looks pretty solid for going back to the office, and hopefully, for crying out loud, getting our kids back to school.
Oh my gosh.
A knife in my heart trying to homeschool my children.
I bet. I can't imagine having kids right now. And also, I have a theory that, we lost so many of our, single millennials, right, who are maybe living with their parents right now. But at some point, even if the vaccine's not here yet, that's got to get old, right? I mean, how long can you live with your parents? So they're going to hopefully start coming back for that reason too, and just anticipating the arrival of the vaccine and things starting to open up. So hopeful.
Well, Tracy, how do people get in touch with you if they want to get in touch with you? Of course, you can always reach out to me. Tracy and I are tag teaming a lot right now, because a lot of clients that I'm talking to, really, I'm here to just provide information. I'm never here to just sell you on selling. It's just like, okay, let's look at the whole picture, talk with Tracy, find out your rents. I'll tell you what's the situation on the buy side. And so I always provide an introduction, but for the people listening, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah. Our website is sfcityrents.com. And my phone number is 415-797-8296. I welcome phone calls anytime. And those are the two best ways to find me.
Awesome. And I think Tracy's probably worked with over 100 of my clients by now. So she's amazing. I haven't yet heard one bad thing about her out of everyone she's worked with. So I highly recommend her. And Tracy, thank you so much for your time today and every day, and for taking such great care of my clients. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Keep them coming. And thank you for having me.
All right. Take care.